Today, I want to welcome my very good friend, Lori Spencer. Lori has been a journalist for a lot longer than I have, and she's from Maverick News, a reliable news source where you can hear the truth. And she was up most of her night streaming on her Strange Bedfellows podcast, so I urge you to check that out. And so, Lori, welcome.
Hi, Kevin. Hey, good to see you. I'm awake. It is 2 o'clock in the morning here in the central United States. I'm in Oklahoma. I got my cup of coffee, my Kennedy for President coffee mug, and I'm up for another great conversation. It sounds like you had a late night too over there, and not in a good way.
Well, I had a late night. It was about midnight, 12:30 last night when we started hearing what we thought was aircraft, which is unusual to begin with. But it went on for about 2 hours, two and a half hours. There was a large launch of Calibre missiles from the Black Sea, about, 160 kilometers from us. People ask how you can hear things like that late at night, but you do, and they're loud. They are quite large missiles. I counted roughly 52 launches over that period of time, if I counted correctly at that time of night, but I am guessing this was a response to another strike on a Crimean ammunition depot. Now, the two ammunition depots that were hit this week were old Soviet ammo. So it's stuff that was mothballed. You hear in the West that it was, the largest ammo storage in Crimea. They actually weren't. So
interesting. So do you think that they knew that when they hit that old depot, or are they just hitting anything that they can hit right now?
I think they're hitting anything that the U.S. and the British point them at. Who knows what they really knew? I couldn't say that right at the moment. So
this is retaliation. This is a retaliatory strike.
I think this is a warning. Don't hit Crimea or we will destroy things.
Yeah. Well, those Ukrainians, they're hard-headed, boy. They don't listen, do they?
Well, I don't know if they're hard-headed or if the United States is.
Yeah, that's more like it. That's more accurate.
Most of what I hear is their strikes are, directed by the British and the Americans.
Me too.
So, Lori, you just recently released a year's worth of research. You want to tell us about that?
Oh, the Nord Stream pipeline research?
Yeah.
Just did a Maverick News special report about that, actually, which you can see on my YouTube channel. I've been digging into this, Kevin, since it happened.
Yep.
And, you and I, we're a little older. We remember the 80s. In fact, I would reckon in the early 80s, you were probably working in the United States military or some branch thereof. So you probably remember the Trans-Siberian Pipeline explosion of 1982. Most people don't know about it. Even older folks like us who remember it, we forgot it 40 years ago. It was a story that was in the news for a few days, and then everybody just forgot about it. The Americans didn't talk about it. The Russians sure as hell didn't talk about it. The Soviets. And it was a spy caper, basically. Long and short of it is, I'm trying to point out to my fellow Americans and people in the West that, if we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and I think it's very likely that we were behind that, it wouldn't be the first time. it would not be the first time that the United
Correct.
States and the CIA specifically blew up a Russian natural gas pipeline that was carrying natural gas from Russia to Western Europe at supplying abundant, cheap energy in a deal that was very beneficial to the, Western Europe, particularly Germany, and that we stabbed our allies in the back by blowing up and sabotaging a pipeline that brought them a lot of affordable energy. And it was all because it was the Cold War, because the Soviets were the evil empire, as President Reagan put it. And remember, Reagan was president in 1982. This was Reagan's CIA. It was largely George Bush, who else, trying to sabotage the energy market, because what was Bush invested in? Oil and gas?
Gee, gas and oil.
There you go. There you go. It was the whole thing was because we were not about to let Russia, the Soviets, get an inroad or an upper hand on us during the energy race and the Cold War of the 1980s. And our current Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, wrote a college thesis when he was a college student at Harvard. And it was published as a book in 1987. It's all about the Trans-Siberian Pipeline crisis. And it was a crisis between the NATO allies and the Soviets over this pipeline being built. And the United States was determined to stop it one way or another. Reagan tried to embargo parts, saying that our Western partners couldn't sell parts to the Soviets for this pipeline. And when that didn't work, because our NATO partners spoke up, they said, hey, it's not your place, United States, to tell us who we can and cannot do business with. And we like the idea of cheap energy. It's in our best interest. So to heck with you, we're going to do this pipeline with the Soviets. Now, that was 1982. 5 years
And
later.
then
Sorry, do you have a question?
Oh, I was going to say, and then, we get to more modern days. We've got the Nord Stream and the U.S. saying, Germany, don't you dare do it. And Germany's saying, well, we're going to do what we want.
That's right.
So, it's the same story over and over. Take money out of the other side's pocket, boost our profits and harm our own allies.
That's right. And, in 1982, we didn't do as much damage. The pipeline, yes, it exploded. And when it exploded, it was the largest non-nuclear explosion ever recorded on planet Earth. It was seen from space. It was a huge explosion. Thankfully, nobody was killed. It was out in remote Siberia, blew up in the middle of nowhere. Nobody was killed. I don't think anybody was seriously injured. And so people just kind of forgot about it. But when the Nord Stream pipeline blew up, older people like me, and probably a lot of people over there in Russia, immediately remembered, the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. Yeah. And we didn't know, at least the Americans didn't know, and I bet the Soviets didn't either. We didn't know who done it. Nobody knew who blew up that damn pipeline for 22 more years. And then finally, some of the CIA people who were involved bragged about it in their own memoirs. Gus Weiss, Thomas Reed, National Security Council advisor to President Reagan, wrote a book about it. And Secretary Blinken wrote a book about it called Ally versus Ally. And of course, it's a rare book now. It was a limited edition printing back in 1987. You can still find paper copies at high prices, or you can just read it for free at the Internet Archive. And I would recommend that you check it out. Check out my special report. It's about 90 minutes and walks you through the whole story of what happened back in 1982 and the incredible similarities to what just happened with Nord Stream. If you need any further proof, any more evidence, and who's the guy who's been probably the most aggressive in our policy, especially as it regarded Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, Antony Blinken. He literally wrote the book about this back in 1987, and it's based upon the last time we blew up a Russian pipeline carrying natural gas to Europe. It's astonishing how many people don't know, and I think a lot of people over there in Russia still don't know about it.
Yeah. Where can people find your report other than linked on Twitter?
You can find it on YouTube. My channel is called Strange Bedfellows Podcast, and that's the name of my show. And that was a special report we did on Maverick News with Rick Walker and I.
Yep. Good show to watch. Those of you who want to see differing ideas being compared in a respectful manner should watch Lori's show, Strange Bedfellows. Really what debate should be these days, rather than what you see in social media with people calling names and all that. So I highly recommend her show.
And so much like we just saw in that House Judiciary Committee hearing that turned so acrimonious and so nasty with Kennedy and the members of his own party this week. And we're going to talk about that. But, I like to say, and Kennedy said right there in his opening statement, how, he's the Strange Bedfellows candidate. His whole candidacy and what he said in his opening statement, that's what my show is all about. It's the idea of getting people who are political opposites, right, and would otherwise be trading insults and fighting with each other to actually sit down face to face and talk. And when you do that in a civil way, and you just come to understand the other guy's point of view, that's half the battle, is putting yourself in their shoes. That's the soul of diplomacy. It's the way out of our international crisis, and it's also the way out of our internal crisis here in the United States. It's the only way to heal that divide.